Hello, welcome everybody to the fourth Breaking Barriers webinar from the PGMOL. My name is Jordan Jarrett-Bryan. Now, I've seen the first three sessions and I'm really excited about today's ones. I've got a bit of a personal interest in this and I'll get to that in just a minute or two. But the focus of this discussion today will be around disability, hearing from some truly inspirational people within the game. The whole point of these sessions is trying to make it accessible and offer advice to those who want to get into football via officiating, but previously may have found it difficult for a variety of reasons, which we'll go into over the next hour. And I'm really excited to hear from some of our panelists, who I will introduce in just a couple of moments' time. But before we get going, here's Mike Riley, the MD of the PGMOL, with a few words to welcome you all. Over to you, Mike. Oh, you're on mute, Mike. Come on, Mike. It's it's over a year now. We've been doing these seminars and Zoom world. Well, I think it's no, we still can't hear you, Mike. Oh.
Any better now?
Oh yes, there we go. We can hear you.
Sorry. Wonderful. The joys of technology. You're right. It's only taken me, what, 14 months to try and master this and still blow it.
We've all been there.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you for the introduction and for helping me get over that little hiccup. More importantly, thank you to everybody else for joining us this evening, the latest session in the Breaking Barriers season. Tonight, we're going to focus on the people who can have a big impact in refereeing and those people who have a disability as well, who really have a valuable contribution to make at all levels of officiating. When we talk about diversity, disability can often find itself really low down on the list of all our priorities, or actually not on the list at all. At PGMOL, though, we really don't want that to be the case. We need to do more, we know that, and we want to do more. And with everybody's help, we're committed to doing that over the next few seasons. We want to see more diversity in every area of football and ensure that everybody has the opportunity to get involved in refereeing. And so I'm delighted that we have such great speakers with us this evening so that they can help us underline that message and also, as we've seen from previous sessions, pass on their advice and guidance. So from me and all of us at PGMOL, a big thank you to Nathan, to Steve and to Keith for giving up their time this evening to share their stories and to share their advice and experiences. We're really lucky to have them in refereeing. Steve is also part of the PGMOL's Inclusiveness Advisory Group. And the goal of the IAG is to make sure that we put equality, diversity and inclusion at the heart of everything that we do. That we listen to all our communities and to make sure that step by step, our people are reflective of all of our communities. This session is another good step forward, and I really hope that you all learn from it and spread the word about getting involved in refereeing and join us in the next series of Breaking Barriers as we go forward. Lastly, this session also marks the first occasion, which is really good why I was mute at the start of it, because that went to everybody, that we're streaming Breaking Barriers live to the world via our Twitter account. So a big welcome to all of you joining us for the very first time. We know that you're going to get a lot from this session, and we hope you return for more as well. So Jordan, thank you for leading the discussion today. I'm looking forward to listening and learning from these super people on the call tonight, and back to you.
Thank you very much for that, Mike. Let's now introduce our special guests for this event. First up, I'm joined by Nathan Mattick. Now, Nathan is the first ever wheelchair user to qualify as a football referee in the UK. And I know Nathan personally through the work we jointly do with the charity WizKids. I'd also want to welcome to the panel former FIFA assistant referee Steve Charles. And also, finally, last but not least, Keith Hill, the PGMOL match observer. Gentlemen, how are we doing?
Very good, thank you.
Great to be here.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for joining me today. I really want to get through the lived experiences of entering, officiating into this sport from the three of you, but also then get to the more practical bits of advice that hopefully will really inform and help people watching this webinar who want to get to where you guys are as well. And just before I start with the questions, guys, I've got plenty for all of you. my personal investment in this subject is that I myself am disabled. So my day job is I'm a sports correspondent for Channel 4 News and a presenter for TalkSport, but I'm also a below the knee amputee. And I'm just like the three of you gentlemen and Mike, four of you, a huge, big, massive football fan. And I've never really seen or thought about the representation of disabled people officiating games. I guess it's that whole thing of if you see it, you can be it. So I'm really interested. I'll be hosting this, but I'm going to be an avid and attentive listener as well, because I'm really keen to hear about your journeys into this as well and why it's important that we do diversify, indeed, the referees and officials that we have that run our game, indeed. We've got some questions that we'll get to just before we close the session that I'll read out that we got in before today's event. I'll get through the back end of the session. Any questions that you guys answer in this next half an hour or so, I'll prioritize the ones later that haven't been answered, if that makes sense. So people that sent in questions, we will get to those very, very shortly. All right, let's kick off now. I'm going to ask all three of you. I'll start with you, Nathan. I'm keen to hear about how you got into becoming a referee and why, because I don't know anybody my age when I was younger who wanted to be a referee or an official. Wanted to be strikers, maybe the coach, but nobody wanted to be a referee. First of all, what was your journey, your entry into becoming an official within football? And secondly, what have been the difficulties being disabled that you've had to overcome?
First of all, I've had cerebral palsy all my life, so I've known no different since I was born. So I've always had this condition, and I've always enjoyed watching football since I was a really young child. So it was something that I've always wanted to do. And when I was younger, I was at primary school, and we could do. They were playing normal football, and I couldn't really get involved. I had a walking frame, which is a really good thing for me to help me walk and stuff. But I felt that I wanted to get involved in football a lot later in life, and I felt potentially refereeing could be an option, because when I was watching the football with my dad when I was younger, I said to him that I always wanted to be a referee once I watched the games, and it was a kind of a struggle because I wasn't really at that. I couldn't qualify at the age that I was at the time, so it took a little while to sort that out. And when I went to the National Star College in Cheltenham, I knew that it was one of my goals to become a referee. So I wanted to make sure that I could try and achieve that goal when I was there. So I spoke to the sports department, and they helped me through that journey. And I'm very grateful to them who helped me get through that journey, as well as the Gloucestershire Football Association. And, having a disability is difficult enough, but you should be able to do absolutely anything, which you can just do it in a slightly different way.
For sure, interesting. Keith, you go next.
Yeah.
What was your entry into becoming an official within the game, and what were the difficulties that you faced when you first entered?
Yeah, I had a lot of encouragement from my local soccer club here in Royston in Hertfordshire. They were very, very positive. I'd often gone along and watched. And I started actually being an assistant referee for my brother's football team. None of the dads wanted to run the line. I started doing it, and through the local youth league here, I managed to get myself onto a course and qualified. Back in the early 80s. So, yeah, that was essentially my pathway into becoming a match official. A lot of local encouragement, a lot of opportunity created for me. Which I then took. I suppose, if I think back similar to Nathan, when I was at school, many ways I was always the last one to be picked. So I don't know if that's in a commonality among referees. It might be probably 2 left feet is another commonality. You wanted to be involved, but maybe not necessarily with the skill sets to play to a high level. But certainly, I found that the more I got into refereeing, the more I enjoyed it, and the more I found that actually there was a pathway for me to be involved at high level as a match official, because in the stadium we're all there for the same first reason, right? The fans, the players, the managers, whoever it is, we're all there for the same first reason. That's because we love the game. It's the second reason we're there that differentiates ourselves. And, so that was very much appealing, that I had an opportunity to progress if my skill set was good enough. And, I was dedicated enough to do so. And that's how it turned out to be, going back to being picked to play in the, the last one to be picked in the school playground, they often used to put me in goal, which seemed a bit counterintuitive, to be very honest, bearing in mind my disability. But that's always the way it ended up. Refereeing's been great to me ever since.
Well, just briefly to stick with you, Steve, how much of a role do you think a disability that is non-visible, so Nathan's disability is very visible, yours with a hearing impairment isn't, how much of a role do you think that plays in trying to enter becoming an official?
Yeah, absolutely right. Not a lot of people knew about my hearing impairment, and it was certainly something that I never told many people about. I kind of kept it hidden or didn't talk about because I thought it may potentially affect me being able to progress within the game. So that was my initial outlook into it. But going back to the question that you asked, in terms of how I got into refereeing, it was a bit different to Keith because I got into refereeing by complete accident. As soon as I was old enough to walk, my older brother used to make me play football. So I grew to love football. And it was only when I was made an under-15 captain that I can remember going up for the coin toss and the referee allowing me to change ends 1 week. And then the following week, when I won the coin toss again, the referee said that I wasn't able to change ends. So that really confused me. And I actually sought out a teacher from my school who I knew was involved in refereeing and asked him the question. And after he'd told me the answer, he kind of said, well, if you enjoy football so much, why don't you learn the laws of the game? So you know how to play the game and you understand what the game is about. So I did that. And it then became, after qualifying, it then became a bit of a disturbance for me because I ended up, when I was playing, was watching more what the referee did. And it certainly wasn't good career advice to try and tell a referee that perhaps they might have got something wrong. So that's why I then had to make the choice of either carrying on playing football or to go refereeing. And I took the refereeing route. And the last part on the challenges I had, at the beginning, definitely, if I take my hearing aids out, I cannot hear anything. And my hearing aids, when I did matches in the rain, they're not waterproof. So I'd have to do that. And I'd have to rely on lip reading. So which caused me some initial issues in terms of players perhaps saying things that I wasn't able to hear. But even just simple questions like how long's left, ref, or ref, we want to have a substitution. That became a difficult thing for me to deal with. And it wasn't until kind of as I got on that I learned how to deal with those scenarios. The buzzer flags was one really good, useful aid for me, which is the assistants have a button that they can press that then alerts your arm, makes a vibration on your arm to tell you that you need to look at your assistants. So that's how I kind of got over those initial issues.
Nathan, just on that last point there, talk to us a little bit about the practical difficulties that you've encountered being in a chair doing your job. What have been the kind of practical, I guess, everyday difficulties being a referee as a wheelchair user that you've had to overcome, and how much have they got better, those difficulties and those practicalities?
Well, the chair I use when I referee is my day-to-day chair, and usually I have to use that every single day of the week. So I have to make sure that my chair is charged every day, just to make sure it's got enough power and enough charge for me to do refereeing when I'm able to do so. The one other thing is about playing surface as well, because in particular when the weather is really wet like it is here today, I would have to usually try and make sure the pitch is dry so that my chair doesn't spin or anything like that. That's why I usually referee on a 3G pitch, and which is a lot easier for my chair to move around in. So it's, for having an electric wheelchair, it's like, it's my legs anyway. So it's always, it's my second pair, it's my life really, because without a chair, I couldn't do anything during the during the day, because it's the thing I have to rely on every single day to get out and about.
Mm-hmm. And let me ask you, I'll ask you, Keith, how difficult has it been, do you think, trying to get younger people with disabilities into becoming referees? Because it's hard enough to get young people to become referees, full stop. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
How much harder has it been trying to get people with disabilities to become, you guys can contribute to this game that we love as well in a very, very key role. You can't play a game without referees. How difficult has that been?
I mean, certainly in my own recent experience, I don't see, as many as maybe there were in the past. I think back to myself joining the national list in '94. We already had an assistant referee who suffered from thalidomide, who was an assistant referee. Richard Saunders was already on the national list of assistant referees then. So I think there's always been an opportunity for people to progress with disabilities. I think a lot of people make their own choices that pathway isn't open to me because of this and that. They make some assumptions rather than testing that assumption by getting involved and seeing where those opportunities exist. I think certainly I never felt that there was a barrier to me to progression in all my journey through. I always thought and felt it was upon merit, and nothing suggested otherwise, either from a proactive opportunity creation or a reactive opportunity for me. So, I think, I would encourage anyone who considers that they want to be involved in the game we all love to make an effort to become involved, like Nathan has, like Steve has, because there are no barriers from the point of view of your application of the law. There might be some, opportunities that need to be created for other areas of disability, but that doesn't mean to say that those can't be investigated and those can't be looked into. And I know that the PGMOL and the FA are very keen to do that, and I would champion that at every turn and every opportunity to be involved in that, because that is a really positive message to show that from the point of view of opportunities, they exist and they're real, and they've been around for some time.
Interesting, yeah. Come to you, Steve, now. There's obviously a lot of work being done to try and ensure that more people with disabilities can access this particular part of the game. We're seeing that rising with the numbers. I'm very conscious that on this call here that there's going to be 4 men and 4 white men. Are we getting any disabled women or black people with disabilities coming through here as well? Is this representation of what we're seeing here as well? Or are there women and other ethnic minorities who are coming through as well?
Yeah, I think it's a very valid question, an absolute valid question. And I think that just kind of highlights all of it, in the sense that actually, because people don't see people with disabilities, they don't think it's open to them. If they don't see BAME officials or other protected characteristic groups, they don't think it's available to them. And I kind of mentioned about the fear earlier of me not wanting to mention that I had a hearing disability. It was fear at the end of the day, because the reality didn't match that. The reality was that as soon as and certainly in my later career, when we had a communication kit system, I was given the aids to help me to develop, to help me to perform to the best of my ability. And I was given the tools that allowed me to do the job. So I think, yes, in answer to your question, that more work needs to be done. And what we're doing here today is one of the ways that we can help encourage people to come forward to get involved in refereeing.
I'll ask a question to all 3 of you. Start with you, Nathan. What changed? What do you think has changed in recent years to ensure that we want more representation amongst our officials now that maybe wasn't happening 5, 10, 15 years ago?
I think now we're in the 21st century. I think there's a lot more opportunities out there for people with disabilities to try and achieve their dreams. And I think with the representation that we've got with everyone, people that like myself, Keith and Steve, who have different disabilities, and and the fact that we're part of a sport that we all love, we can show to people that regardless of disability, you can still get involved in the sport that you enjoy.
Same question to you, Keith.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo exactly what Nathan said there. It's interesting that the opportunities that we need to create, and we are invested in creating, and through this seminar, are ones that need to be made available and highlighted for people to go and find. It's like everything, isn't it? If it's not placed in front of you 2 or 3 clicks or 2 or 3 search engines away, then people will tend to move on to the next thing. So we've got to be very proactive, I think, in today's technology in the 21st century to actually use the conduits that are available to us to make it very clear that it's a very inclusive environment. It needs to be more inclusive, and there needs to be greater representation across a greater number of people, whether they be from disability backgrounds or BAME backgrounds, whatever they are. But again, I think we need to make sure that people see that access is easy for them to do that, and then to be supported when they make those reach outs and they seek to become involved.
Anything Stevie wants to add to the gentleman on that question?
No, nothing to add other than what Nathan and Keith have said there.
Brilliant. I'll start with you on this one then. We're seeing slowly more women coming into officiating Premier League games at the top level. I think France, if I'm not mistaken, are really quite well ahead in women officiating games in leagues below League 1. We're not seeing many in the Premier League black referees. How long do you think it will be before we start seeing regular disabled officials in the Premier League? I'm going ambitious. Let's go big. Let's go big. That was to you, Steve. Sorry.
Apologies. So actually, yeah, I think it has to start, doesn't it? It has to start from the beginning, and it's about us getting people involved from the start. We need to get people to understand that it is quite a long process to go from the start to the top, but it's about getting people at the beginning, and I think that's the stumbling block, isn't it? And as I've said, what we're doing today is important. We definitely need to have situations where we go into the disabled community and promote, and then I think once we do that, and people understand that it is accessible, then we can expect to have people like myself, like Keith, like Nathan, progressing in the next 5 to 10 years.
Mm-hmm. Nathan, how long before I see you at Old Trafford giving Man United penalties that aren't really penalties?
Well, who knows? Regardless of our disability, hopefully one day we could see people with disabilities at Old Trafford, at Stamford Bridge, at the Emirates to officiate games in the Premier League, because it would be a fantastic thing if we could see that, because it would show that we can do anything. And that's the thing. We just do things sometimes we do it in a slightly different way. And I think people got to realise that we're valid people as well, and make sure that we're given the opportunities. Because personally, I think I've had a few in the past where people have put me down and said, "Oh, you can't do this, you can't do that," but then you've got to prove them wrong. And I think we got to try and make sure people realise we can still do things.
Keith, what have been some of the biggest challenges? Sorry, let me ask you another question here. What key things have helped you overcome your hearing impairment to ensure you can perform at the highest level?
Sorry, can you say the first part? I missed the first part. It was distorted.
Sure, sorry, yeah. What key things have helped you overcome your hearing impairment to ensure you can perform at the highest level?
I think the key thing for me that really helped was the communication kit, and that they modified it so that I could hear only and with great clarity what the referee and the rest of the team were saying. That was a key part that helped me to perform. But naturally, well, from me personally, I actually saw, especially when I was as an assistant referee, the fact that I wasn't able to hear the background noise, the noise of the crowd, and that I was able to focus clearly and cleanly on what was going on the field of play. That was a real positive for me, and it allowed me to perform at the highest level.
Keith, I'm quite interested to hear about what it's like being in a game, and I can imagine when you've got a certain amount of people screaming at you, shouting at you, the pressure of a decision in a split second that you've got to get right. How much, if at all, does your disability add to that pressure, or in that moment, does your disability then almost it's not in your conscience, it's not relevant at all, it's not a factor in dealing with the pressure in pressure moments? Well,
I think your last statement is the answer. It's never been a conscious thought. You certainly haven't got time to think about it. In a game situation, you think about referees and you think about assistant referees. The amount of multitasking we're doing within split seconds is quite phenomenal. And I don't think people really appreciate it. Not only are we communicating two-way with our colleagues at the moments that we're making decisions, but we're also communicating with players, some of whom agree with us, some of whom disagree with us, some of whom actually do both within a nanosecond of their first answer. We've also got crowd, as you say, we've also got a number. So there's a lot of constituent parts. Then you add in the focus that comes from outside the stadium through TV and other things, so there's a number of things that are in play every time you blow your whistle, or even every time you don't blow your whistle, because of course you're making decisions when you're not being overt in the game as much as you are when you are being overt. So yeah, I mean, it's never been something that I've been conscious of in a game. I think sometimes I suppose the only time I would sort of counter that is sometimes earlier on in my career, when I was aspiring to progress, I would sometimes get feedback that said you just need to be a little bit more, turn your body as well as your arm when you're making decisions with your left arm. Which, if you think about it from the point of view of going upwards and communicating to a vastly bigger audience, has merits in it, and I never saw that as being something that was detrimental. I actually found that to be of help, because I knew that actually it would allow me to participate and act with credibility and value at that higher level where communication is so much more spotlighted.
Nathan, question to all three of you. I'll start with you, Nathan. Let's try and bring a bit of positivity in. What are the best things about being a referee and official in football? What are the things that you guys love that really make you happy and give you the best moments when you're doing this job?
Great question, Jordan. For me, it's about being a part of the game I absolutely love. It's something that, as I said earlier, it was something that I've always wanted to do since I was a young child. And it's also giving back to the game, because the game has given me so much. And I cannot thank everyone who's been part of my refereeing journey enough, because they've given me so much support. And then I'm giving back to them by refereeing games for the FA and everything like that. And also it's about giving back to the players as well, because I referee in a disability league. And seeing someone also with a disability refereeing their games might give them an opportunity to think, maybe I can get involved afterwards, after I've played football. So maybe seeing myself, Steve and Keith from refereeing, they might be saying, okay, I would love to do that in the future. And at least, and the good thing is that their opportunities are definitely there for that.
Steve, same to you.
Without thinking about it too much, I have to say that it's developed me as a person. Refereeing, just being out there, has helped me develop, and it's helped me with so many kind of transferable skills in terms of being able to manage people. It's helped me. It's given me great confidence. It's allowed me to be a much better person. And the person I was before I came into referee to where I am now, I owe refereeing a lot. So refereeing has definitely helped me to be a better person.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo what both the guys have said, because if I think back to those days when I first started local refereeing, going to I'd go out to the villages on my moped, and that felt like an overseas appointment, getting out of the town. And then to actually experience a real overseas appointment as a match official, going and I know Steve's experienced this, I'm sure Nathan will, going into a stadium and looking up above the stand and seeing one of the flags is your flag and it's for you, and you are there representing your colleagues and your country and everyone else in refereeing that's got you to there is a very proud thing. And that sort of sense of achievement is truly magical, and it does inspire you to go on and do other things inside and outside of refereeing. And there's no doubt that that has been a catalyst for some of the things that I've had the opportunity to do and experience. And I can't thank refereeing enough for those opportunities and experiences.
There's this question I always kind of feel slightly uncomfortable asking, but I'm going to ask it anyway. And I get criticised for it because it sounds like I'm putting pressure on footballers to solve the world's problems. But in the way that we see a lot of footballers talking out against sexism, racism, and homophobia, would you like to see footballers use their profiles to support disabled people working within the game more? Can some of the most high-profile players do a bit more to use their profile and their influence to shine a light on the lack of disabled people working in football, full stop, but in particular as officials? Start with you, Steve.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if any player was to come out and talk about how they would like to see diversity in refereeing, I think that would have a massive impact. I think it would. They'd have much more pulling power than we do in that sense. And what's also I think would be equally as important is that it doesn't have to be said by somebody that's diverse. It can be said by a white male man as well. I can recall Ben Mee speaking out about racism earlier on in the season, and I think the power that had in terms of saying, look, this needs to stop, was equally or as powerful as anybody saying it. So definitely, I think that would be a very, very positive step.
Brilliant. Keith?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think any time when there's role models within a game, no matter what their role in that game is, but they have a profile, I think they can use that for good as well as they can use that for negative. So, if we can, harness that and we can align to that and we can show that, there's those opportunities, and it can be sponsored by people who not only officiate but also play and also are involved in administration roles or whatever their involvement in the game. Anything where they can show that there is a pathway for others to follow. I think that is a positive thing for us to engage with and to us to promote. And there's so many platforms now with which we are able to do that these days. We can reach a very wide audience in a very short space of time. I think we should be looking to partner with those that are able to give us those spotlights and those platforms, and we should be looking to maximise the opportunities that people like myself, Steve, Nathan, who have that experience, who have been through that, and we can align with those who give us some spotlight to pass those messages on. That can only be a positive.
Nathan, anything to add to that?
I don't have anything to add to that. I agree with both Steve and Keith.
Brilliant. This week is Mental Health Awareness Week, gentlemen, I'm sure you're aware. It's such a high-pressure job that you guys are doing, and you guys can't win. You just can't win. Whatever you do, you're going to be hated when you walk off that pitch. Someone's going to not like you or have something negative to say.
I know, but in fairness, Jordan, I don't take my wife to my games anymore. In fairness.
Fair enough. Is there enough, in your views, support for referees and officials in dealing with the aftermath of the mental baggage that you may or may not take off the back of a game? How much is the infrastructure within sport and football there, in your views, to support referees that that are coming through really, really tough, emotionally driven occasions? Nathan, let me start with you.
I think that's another good question. I would agree that there is enough support there with the FA, PGMOL, and also the Referees Association. And I think for me, in particular, my very first game back a few years ago now, I remember making an absolute rubbish decision, and I felt really bad because I knew it was wrong and I couldn't go back to it. And I've learned from that day that I always, if I dwell on a decision that I've made that was wrong, that if I feel a bit upset or anything, that I go and ask those people that who are supporting me and say, look, you know, I'm not feeling too great after making that decision. What do you think? What can I improve next time? And especially with Mental Health Awareness Week this week, I think it's so important that absolutely everyone, if they have anything that worries them, always seek help and always speak to people, because it always will help you. That's what I've experienced, and speaking to people for me has helped me so much over the last few years, and continuously does to do so.
Thank you. Keith, sorry.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think I think certainly there has been a greater and wise investment in that support at the highest level. You know, where the spotlight has increased. With the turn of professionalism coming into the upper echelons of the game in terms of assistant refereeing and refereeing, you know, that as part of the package of support, you know, has had to be there, and it's been heavily invested in by the organisation, you know, that's responsible for that, you know, ourselves, PGMOL, and I know that certainly there's a lot of partnership that goes on with the FA in that respect as well. And I think, you know, anything that helps to support and destigmatizes the need for help and support needs to be encouraged. And I think, again, you know, we look at football in many ways, you know, still being behind the curve in respect of its open endorsement and support to those that need support, you know, and I think, you know, we're taking the lead in that very much so in refereeing, I believe, and we need to make sure that that continues, you know, and that open sense of when you need help, knowing where to get it, and not having it held against you because you have had to ask for some help, is a real positive. And I think that has been a shift in recent times, and I'm sure that will continue, because that is an excellent enabler for people to recognise that, you know, having a challenge mentally at times is not a weakness. You know, asking for help is a strength and needs to be encouraged to build that resilience you need to do the job.
Yeah, totally agree. And Steve?
As I mentioned, I came into refereeing not knowing absolutely anybody, and I always found people willing and able to offer some support, offer some advice, people to kind of help mentor you, to coach you, all that in an unofficial capacity. In fact, when I got to the Premier League, I only knew of one person on the Premier League, but again, everyone was so helpful and so supportive that I can't remember at any stage through my career that I didn't have that support. And actually, there's more support available now than there was as I was coming through that. So yeah, and I think it's important that you have personal support as well within your outside of refereeing, and in my case, my family have helped me on that scale as well.
Yeah.
Brilliant. I'm going to try and get through now questions that the viewers sent in, and I want to try and get through as many as possible in the remaining time. I'll kick off with Jordan Brown, who asked, do you feel the game is set up to ensure those with a disability can have the best chance to succeed across all levels? What I'll do is I'll fire the questions to one of you, and then each question, if there's something that someone else wants to add to that question, please just raise your hand. Please feel free to jump in, but just so I can get through as many as possible, I'll put one question per panelist. I'll put that one to you, Keith. Do you feel the game is set up to ensure those with a disability can have the best chance to succeed at all levels?
I think we need to do more, and I think, you know, we'll never get to the end of the pathway of doing more, but I do think we need to do more. And I think, you know, Mike started off at the start of the session by highlighting that, you know, everybody within football and refereeing, within PGMOL, recognises that we need to do more. So yes, I think once we have those clear pathways, I mean, when I was working at the FA, I was part of the working group on creating the pathways for female referees to progress rather than having to do it through the men's game. You know, and that, you know, that's 10, 15 years ago. So, but now we're seeing the fruits of that. We're seeing the, Rebecca refereeing in the Football League now. We've seen, full representation of female referees on our FIFA lists, not because we want to hold the space, but because actually we've got more to choose from than we have spaces for. And that has taken a long time for that to come to fruition. And of course, now female refereeing, is at the highest level is going to be supported with training and development and investment through the PGMOL, which is a massive positive. But that's a journey that, I was involved with at the start, and we need to do some similar work in respect of creating some pathways for match officials with disabilities to see where that journey can take them and where their abilities can be truly utilised in the most positive way. So we've got some blueprints. We need to, I think, bring some of those to fruition when it comes to disability freeing as well.
Brilliant. This next question, actually, I will put to all three of you. Cara Sante is asking, what advice would you pass on to those with a disability who are considering taking up refereeing? Steve, I'll start with you.
Oh, absolutely, go for it. Hopefully the message you've been listening to from the three of us explains to you that, as long as you've got the right commitment, as long as you really want to go for it, as long as you're prepared to go through the high points, the low points, and seek support, and you've got to learn and grow kind of attitude, go for it. Absolutely.
Nathan?
I echo what Steve has just said. I think every time you go for it, because the fact is you never know what could happen. A lot of positives could come out of it as well. As Steve says, that there will be ups and downs, but if you try it, you never know what could happen, and you may regret it if you don't try it. And doors are always open for different things. And I think if you really want to go for it, I would always recommend you to try it, and always ask for help if you need it, because there are people there to support you. So if you have a simple question, just ask it, because then you'll feel much better after you've asked that question.
Brilliant. And Keith?
Nothing to add, Jordan. I think the guys have explained it and promoted it very well. Give it a go.
Thank you. Thank you. Another question here. This one's for you, Nathan, specifically to you, from Daniel Roberts. What was your inspiration to become a referee, and did you have doubts or want to give up? I'm in a power wheelchair, and I don't think I can do it. So well done on your success. You've explained at the top of this webinar what your inspiration was, but did you at any point ever have moments where you just thought this is too difficult, too hard? I'm tapping out.
Well, David, very good question, and thank you for your question. I think for me, every time when I started the refereeing career, I did think, oh, is this something for me? And I felt at the time maybe it might be too tricky for me to get involved because of being in a power chair. But every door was open because the FA were very, very accommodating. And they have been so brilliant with me over the last few years as a referee. And I just think without their support, I wouldn't have been able to do it. So, and I'm really, really grateful for their support throughout the years. And like we said earlier, go for it if you really, really would like to try it, because you never know. There could be amazing things that could happen in the next few years.
And I will echo Daniel's congratulations there. I've seen your ascent over the last few years and very proud of you as well. So well done and keep it up. This next question is to Steve and Keith. How did it feel officiating your first ever Premier League/Football League match? Any pre-match nerves? Keith, you go first.
Well, I think it was always a dream to be involved in the Premier League, and I was lucky enough to do that. At West Ham. West Ham was my very first Premier League line against Coventry City. Always remember it, in 1996. And my first Football League middle was at Shrewsbury Town against Scunthorpe United. You're always looking for something in the game, and so it was an alphabetical derby, so it added a little bit more pressure. That I wanted there. Was I nervous? Yes, of course. I think I got to the ground shortly before the milkman did that morning. Wanted to make sure that everything was in place. you know, I think that sense of coming off and having achieved both of those aims and goals was amazing. It was amazing for me. It was amazing for my family. You know, I think you know, there should always be that pang of positive nervousness when you go out to do a job that takes responsibility and skill. You know, the moment that's not there, I'm sure the guys would agree, is the day that it normally goes wrong for you. So yeah, I mean, I enjoyed those two experiences, and they were something that I'd aimed for, and I look back on them with amazing fondness now, even all those years back into the previous century, which is when it was.
Brilliant. And Steve, same to you.
Yeah, in terms of nerves, you bet. I mean, I was a bag of nerves, but actually, you know what? As time developed, I saw that as a positive. Nerves actually meant I was more alert and I was ready for the game. So nerves, I think is nothing to be afraid of. The actual game, like Keith, my first Premier League game was at West Ham against Bolton. And I remember two things from that game. The very first thing I remember, Mike Dean was the referee, Darren Cann was the other assistant. So we went out for our warm-up, and we were warming up and down in front of the Bolton supporters. And they were singing, first of all, Dino, Dino, give us a wave. And I thought, oh, here we go. And so Mike Dean did his stuff and gave him a wave back. And then I thought that was it. But then to my horror, they started singing Darren Cann, give us a wave. And I thought, please, it's my first game. Please don't. Leave it at that. But then it did happen. And so I gave a wave, and so I remember that. And I remember thinking, wow, this is good. And I can honestly say that never, ever happened to me ever again after that. So
it must have been the way you waved, Steve. It must have been the way you waved.
I think so. It didn't do well. But the second point on the game as well, and I couldn't tell you the score. I couldn't tell you who even played in the game. But the second point I remember was almost out of camera shot, but not quite. I slipped over, and I thought, well, you know, the play wasn't near me. I probably wasn't on camera, but I was slightly. And at the end of the game, I had about 6 or 7 messages saying, "We saw you." So that was quite an eye opener for me in terms of how much of a high profile career I was going to be having. That actually everything you do can be seen by somebody.
Jordan, I was very nervous when Steve ran his first Football League line, because I was the referee. You know, so I don't think I've ever known nerves like it. But no, in all seriousness, you know, it was apparently obvious after not very long in the game that this was somebody who knew exactly what they were doing and how to do it. And I know it was great when you see those things, when you see somebody achieving their aim, their aspiration, their goals, and to be involved in that. And I think that's true for all of us. You know, we've all got those aims and aspirations and goals. To be nervous again, you know, on match day, because, you know, that is when you perform at your best.
Indeed. Manish and Celine, forgive me, I'm going to skip your questions. I think the guys have answered your questions during the last hour. I'm going to try and rattle through 3 quick ones in the last 10 minutes here. Jan asked a question: what is something referees should think about at the start of their career that will help them a lot in the future? Any lessons you wished you'd got at the start of your career? Nathan, you kick off.
I think for me, I would always advise everybody who's becoming a referee to contact their local FA, always get their support, as well as try and get involved in their local referees association, because they have been such a big help for me over the last few years. I'm a bit annoyed that I didn't join it any sooner than I actually did. I think it's so important that you join your local association and your local FA as well, because they're there to support you in every single step of the way. They have local meetings and things like that. So if you had any queries about anything that you made to do with refereeing, they're the people to ask. and I cannot recommend enough for people to join their local FA and Referees Association.
Steve?
Yeah, I think through the course of this discussion, I think the thing that sort of resonates with me a bit on this is that actually I wish I'd spoken out about my hearing impairment from the start of my career, because the fear was internal, and I certainly realised that when I was able to talk about it, the support and the aids that were given to me to help me perform at my best was important to me. And so in terms of not being afraid to have said it, would have probably enhanced me earlier. Equally, I kind of regret that by not doing it, by not speaking out and letting people know about it, it possibly didn't encourage anyone to come and join me on my journey.
Interesting. It's very interesting. And Keith?
We've only got 10 minutes, right? Because it would take a lot longer to list all the things that I wish I'd knew now back then, right? And that's the great thing about refereeing, and we've already touched on how it's impacted all of our lives outside of our involvement in it in a positive way. And again, I think back to that start, that open-mindedness, piece, when you're at the start and you're progressing. And then sometimes when you achieve some success or you get very close to what you might consider to be an ultimate game, is you don't often appreciate that actually you still need some help, and you actually still need to take advice on board, and you actually still need to be very open-minded in a growth mindset, and it happens in business, it happens in all walks and fields of life, right? And I would say to anyone who's coming into refereeing, be open-minded, even if your next game is the FA Cup final, because that growth mindset, that sense that the reinvestment in yourself is a continuous journey, and just because you've got to a standard or you've achieved something doesn't mean to say that you've got nothing else to learn and you've got nothing else to be better at tomorrow than you were yesterday. So the biggest thing I would say is have that growth mindset that gets some success and some progression, but then maintain it and invest even more in it, because actually you'll need it in even greater depth the further you go with your career. That growth mindset is critical, and the more you are open-minded and the more you invest in it, the more success I'm sure you'll receive and get.
Sky Sports have got the yellow and black ticker that goes below their screen. We've got the blue and white one. So for those that want some information, I'm sure we'll get it up in a second. For anybody watching this that wants to get into refereeing, there's an email and a Twitter as well. There is. So go to email them if you're interested in trying to access the opportunities to become a referee as well. Right, I want to get through two quick ones before we wrap up. Quick final one. Penultimate one. Social media, a question from Eddie here. Do you guys think that social media owners should do more, such as demanding users to prove their identity before using their platforms to abuse all members of sports organizations, such as referees, players, etc.? Got about 30 seconds each of you on this one, guys. Keith, you kick off.
Yeah, I think anything that allows a safe environment to operate in a positive manner needs to be encouraged and endorsed. And I know there's a lot of focus on this from government and sports. The other weekend we had a very powerful weekend of social media blackout, of which PGMOL participated in as well. And I think that that sends a positive message. But the more we can do to create an environment that is safe, is collaborative, where people can give opinion without hiding behind barriers, is a positive thing. And if the byproduct of that means that we prevent abuse and we prevent opportunities for people to do so, to create negativity in what is positive, then I'm all for that.
Steve?
Yeah, I think Keith has hit the nail on the head there, absolutely. And I think the momentum now is for something to happen. The PGMOL, the FA, they are in alliance with the Premier League to make this happen. So, and of course, government. So it seems that all the stakeholders are interested in getting this sorted out, and hopefully it will happen very sooner rather than later.
And Nathan?
I have to agree with both Steve and Keith there. I think you have to have ID going forward, because it's absolutely vital with what's going on at the moment on social media and the experiences that I've had as well. I just think people need to think before they type something onto social media.
Guys, can you just all tell me, is it a Monday or a Tuesday when all the referees meet up to decide what decision they're going to give against Arsenal on the weekend's games? Because I'd really love to know when you guys meet to decide to conspire against Arsenal in this Premier League. Because just want to know if any chance of you guys telling me Monday or Tuesday. No.
Sorry, Jordan. The line went really fuzzy there. I don't think we heard the question. I don't think there's time for the answer either. So.
I'm one of those very bitter Arsenal fans, so just ignore me. Listen, guys, that was so insightful and really, really interesting. I've learned a lot from understanding not only your entry points into becoming referees, but how difficult it is, the process, and being disabled, the work that needs to be done to ensure that we get more and more people, at the bare minimum, having opportunities to enter the sport that we all love. So that was really, really helpful and insightful. So Steve, Nathan, and Keith, thank you very much for joining us all today. Great advice and contributions. Just want to let everybody know on this call here, Breaking Barriers returns later this month on Wednesday, the 26th of May, and we have another esteemed, awesome, phenomenal session planned. So look out for details on that. This panel features leading grassroots referee Patsy Andrews, Rebecca Welch, who became the first female referee appointed to an EFL match, and Premier League legend Sir, we're going to call him Sir, Les Ferdinand, who's Director of Football at Queen's Park Rangers. So that's going to be another strong panel there. Look out for that one, and all the outlets, and we'll give you details to get in touch regarding attending that event. So please also keep an eye out for clips from today's session on social media. You can follow the PGMOL on Twitter and Instagram. Just search for @FA_PGMOL, and please do share the words and wisdom to amplify the advice and messages from today's session. And once again, thank all four of my guests. We have Mike earlier on here session as well, for joining us. And let's all work harder to ensure that we can diversify our industry to make it a better one indeed. Thanks for watching. Everyone take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.